Good day. Welcome to the Bid More weekly webinar. Bid More is a program that equips local small businesses to win contract bids at the local, state, federal, and other organizational levels. During this live webinar, you will hear tips and best practices from trained experts on topics related to estimating and proposal writing. For even more free tips to help you create more informed bids and estimates, subscribe and like our YouTube channel entitled Bid More. Remember, the Bid More program encourages you to use every opportunity available to you to sharpen your saw to bid more and win more. The topic of this Bid More session is bid evaluation criteria by Bid More Consultants. We appreciate the ICAT Bid More Consultants, Aaron Shalanson, Alex Fisher, Terry Kelly, Tyree Williams, and Gabe Hamda for generously sharing their knowledge, experiences, insights, and practical tips to empower our local small businesses to bid more and win more. So I hope you all enjoy this presentation.
Thank you, Tyree. I appreciate that. So, as Tyree mentioned, we will discuss the evaluation criteria. What we're looking at now says Bid More 5 steps to proposal writing. So there are 5 steps that ICAT has come up with. Step 1 was the requested scope of work. Step 2, what are bidding requirements, including minimum requirements, evaluation criteria, and submission instructions. Step 3, what are required forms and guidelines for completing each form? Step 4, what are the required bidder documents? And step 5, what is the required pricing structure? So as Tyree mentioned today, what we will focus on is the evaluation criteria. So in bid evaluation criteria, what you're looking at basically is what your organization, how you'll be measured. So what as a vendor, what will you be measured on when you are responding to a solicitation? So we have a lot of information that we're going to share with you in reference to evaluation criteria. So with that being said, let's go ahead and jump on in. First, let's start with what do we mean when we say evaluation criteria? So what's the definition of bid evaluation criteria? Any volunteers?
Terry, I think that is an awesome question, and I will lend a few words to that. Let's start with bid evaluation, Terry. So bid evaluation is the organized process of examining and comparing bids to select the best offer in an effort to acquire goods, work, and services necessary to achieve the goals of an organization. So with that being said, what bid evaluation is, the evaluation criteria are the standards against which bids are evaluated. So generally, evaluation criteria can be categorized into 3 different categories. And I would love to kind of hear a little bit more about those, or we'll talk a little bit more about those categories later. But long story short, the evaluation criteria are the standards against which bids are evaluated.
Okay, so kind of like the benchmarks, right? So they're like benchmarks for which organization or company will be measured. So, all right, thank you so much for that definition, Tyree. I appreciate that so much. And does anyone else want to chime in? If not, we will keep moving.
I'll say something. One thing that most people do not realize is that the set of minimum requirements is actually a form of bid evaluation. And we'll be touching on that a little bit more when we talk about the categories coming up.
Okay. Thank you, Aaron. I appreciate that. All right. So let's go ahead and look at the next question. What are other names for evaluation criteria? So if I'm looking at a solicitation, so am I going to be looking for the words that say evaluation criteria, or could there be something else? Is there another name or something that I would be looking for? Who'd like to take that question?
Terry, I can take that question. Oh, go ahead.
Well, as I said before, minimum requirements is one of them. Evaluation criteria is one that does exist. You'll find a page that says that, but also evaluation matrix is another title for it. Tyree, what were you gonna add?
I definitely was going to add a couple of those. Those are excellent. Also, I've seen basis for award and evaluation factors for award. So knowing what's really most important is knowing what bid evaluation criteria is, so that when whatever it's titled under, you will know basically that that's the evaluation criteria. So it may be under a different name, evaluation matrix, valuation factors, basis for award. But if you know what the bid evaluation criteria and the purpose of it is, which will tell you a little bit more about what the purpose of bid evaluation criteria is, then you can understand where it's at and how to respond.
Yes, the best way to find it is pretty much visually. There is a set standard. It's always a set of instructions defined to evaluate your overall company status, evaluate what you can and can't do, evaluate even, that's why they set the minimum requirements, to make sure that a company can meet expectations when entering the bid process.
All right. Thank you too for sharing that information. I appreciate that. I appreciate your input. All right. And any others like to share? Okay. Hearing no others, let's go on to question number 3. What are some examples of evaluation criteria? What are some examples?
Hey, this is Alex. I'll answer that.
Hey, Alex.
So I'll introduce myself. I'm Alex Fisher. I'm a licensed general contractor and professional engineer. And some examples of evaluation criteria could be years of experience for a project. If your firm or company does a certain type of work, they might be grading you on specific technical years of experience of that exact type of work. Some other things could be licenses, or I'm sorry, I lost the train of thought there. Licenses or certifications of doing a certain type of work.
Definitely.
All right.
I've definitely seen those before, and looking at different solicitations. Alex, I think those are excellent. And I've seen a few other ones like the work plan design, the cost breakdown. Cost breakdown is a big one. Staffing ability. So the ability to actually staff the project is usually in the evaluation criteria. Demonstrated commitment to the project. I actually seen a proposal that had to do providing, I want to say like mental health counseling services, and they wanted you to actually say your commitment to providing those counseling services in that community. Like, why are you vested in this project? Also, I've seen proximity to the project. So let's say you live in Jacksonville, but the solicitation calls for you to do work in Tallahassee. You might get graded based on that. And then compliance and QA capability. And like you said, Alex, past and present record of professional performance, I think that's a big one, or years of experience, very similar. So Terry, those are a few. I don't know if any of our other wonderful consultants would like to chime in, but those are quite a few of the different criteria that I've seen before.
So another one that occurs more on product-based type of solicitations is sample requirements. Sometimes whenever throughout the bid process, at some point, a vendor may have to submit a sample of a product, t-shirt, a screen, swatch even, to make it to the next stage of the approval process.
That's a very good point. Oh, I'm sorry, Tyree. Thank you. Go ahead, Tyree. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just saying that's an excellent one. I like that.
Right. Yes, that's exactly what I was going to say. That's a very good point to bring out. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing that. Kind of tie into what some of you all have been saying. I've seen, of course, the references and the depth of client base. So kind of speaking to the experience of what your company has to offer. So how many, you may have the experience, but how many solicitations have you answered? How much experience do you have in that area? So the depth of the client base and the approach or your philosophy about going about being able to respond or handle the particular solicitation. So I've seen a couple of those as well. And the organization qualification. So how organized, I guess, are you with being able to manage the particular project? So I guess showing your project management skill of being able to complete the actual project. So in looking at a particular solicitation, I've seen that as well. So thank you guys. Thank you all for those responses. I truly appreciate it. And if we have no others, we will go ahead and move on to the next one. Okay. Why does the evaluation criteria exist? Why does the evaluation exist? Who'd like to take that one?
So
I'll
Terry,
take that one.
Oh, take.
I love
take
it. Hey, we all want to share. I appreciate that.
Go ahead, Tyree, and I'll chime in after.
Okay, no, definitely. So I was just gonna say, kind of like in my definition, I kind of talked about in the beginning about bid evaluation. So the whole point of bid evaluation is to basically get the best work, get the best bang for your buck. So basically, it's an organized process for examining and comparing bids to select the best offer. So really, the purpose of the criteria is so that company that is trying to get that work done actually gets the best bidder, the best organization to actually do for the best price. And I will kick it over to you, Alex, to tighten that up.
Basically, the client's just making sure they get the right possible company for the right type of technical work that they're going after.
I love that.
If it's like, for me, my background is construction. There's 1,000 different types of construction, and you see 1,000 different types of construction solicitations. But then, it might be something in the medical field for a mental health expert or a mental health expert advisor, and you want to make sure you get the right person for the job. So the evaluation criteria exists just to make sure that the client gets exactly what they want.
I'd like to add to that. I think this is actually probably one of the most important questions too. It's a way for the solicitor to protect themselves from backlash, favoritism and things like that. So the main thing, it's to reduce issues associated with favoritism and unfair evaluation. So it really is designed to protect them and to filter out top quality vendors.
Oh, that's a good point, Aaron. As far as basically like you're saying, is to make it fair, to make it even, so that you're not, like you said, showing any favoritism to anyone. Because I know this particular company, I know this owner, and I know he'll do a great job. So let me just go ahead and weigh in and let him have it. So now you have the evaluation criteria, so it's a fair shot for everyone. So
risk management, yes, that's the word I was trying to say. Risk management, the way to manage overall risk.
Got it. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. All great input from you all. So I appreciate that.
May I add?
Absolutely, Gabe. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I've been quiet today, right? Because there is all this amazing energy flowing. So to maybe say what Aaron said differently is to create fairness in the bidding process and objectivity into the bidding process. So said for the bidder, it shows them, the rules of engagement, what do they have to do to bid or to win. To the buyer, they want to show their standard. What are they looking for? So it has a benefit for, society, because, at the end of the day, when a road is built or a bridge is built or a building is built or, training is acquired or any service is acquired from a government agency on behalf of the public, it kind of helps you get the right vendor for the right price, maybe even for the lowest price. So the benefits are all around and everyone wins because of these bid evaluation criteria. And I would say, if you are bidding on a job, do not respond before you know the evaluation criteria. Okay? Do not respond before you check out and find out what the evaluation factors are. So this is, as Aaron said, this is the most important section of the solicitation that you are responding to.
That was well said, Gabe.
Absolutely. I agree with Aaron. That was well said. Thank you so much for kind of wrapping that up, summarizing what Aaron was saying. So yes, I appreciate that, Gabe. And without any other comments, we can continue on. Let's go on to the next question. So what are the basic types of evaluation criteria? The basic types of evaluation criteria. What are we looking at with that question?
Me and Aaron spoke a little bit about this earlier, so I definitely want to hear Aaron's response, if you don't mind, Aaron.
Okay, there are essentially three basic types of evaluation criteria that anybody will ever see. And the first is the most basic, the simplest form is think about every time you've ever looked at minimum requirements. Most of the time, those are going to be in a bullet point. If you've ever read, when you're reading the request for proposal or invitation to bid, those things are typically bullet pointed. So those are your simplest forms you're ever going to find. My next one is the multi-factor evaluation criteria. That criteria is very intensive, because typically with that type, you have to submit several times different documents. Sometimes you'll have the first one will be minimum requirements. You submit that document, and then they'll want pricing after that. Once you make it through that process, then you submit your pricing, and they may want samples in the next process. So that one's very involved, but those are the three basic types that you'll ever see.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to add? Tyree, do you want to chime in a little bit with that, or are you good? Or does anyone else like to add any more content to that question?
Sure, I'll chime in just to give more of a general basic types of evaluation criteria. Very similar to what Aaron was saying. Three other general basic types of evaluation criteria could be mandatory criteria. So those are things that are pass fail, basically those minimum requirements, like Aaron was saying. Then you have the weighted criteria, similar to what Aaron was saying. And the weighted criteria, basically you get a certain number of points. So it's not pass or fail, you get a certain number of points for that. And then you have weighted criteria with mandatory elements. So that's basically criteria that have mandatory minimum requirements defined and are measured above the minimum requirement. So for example, a requirement may be set for a consultant to be fluent in at least 2 international languages, and a rated score may be assigned for persons with additional international language capabilities. So if the additional language adds value. So what I'm saying is basically it's mandatory to have, so for that example, it would be mandatory for that person to be fluent in 2 languages, but they can get additional points if they're fluent in another language that adds value. So you have the mandatory part of the criteria, but it's also weighted and they get more points. And that's just more general. It's very similar to what Aaron was saying.
Bonus points, you mean?
Yep. In some cases it can be bonus points if they go over and above the mandatory element of that criteria.
Yeah, I came across the RFP they actually listed an extra evaluation criteria at the bottom below their the firm matrix, and says anybody that replies to this will gain an extra 10 points. So that's why I was asking. I've seen that where they kind of give extra credit, almost like on a test.
Definitely. It's a great opportunity to really set yourself apart from the competition. Anyone else listening who may be in a different county, in a different city, check with your local small business office or your county to see if there are any equal opportunity programs for small businesses. Thanks for sharing that, Aaron.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both for sharing all that information. Thank all of you. And I know you guys were talking about the weighted criteria. I just want to mention or make it, I think it's important in referencing that certain areas, certain criteria that's weighted, it isn't all weighted the same, you know, that it's weighted differently. So you may have more points in one area than in another in order to get your total of most likely 100%. But so just kind of reading and making sure that you're paying attention to those particular areas. Of course, you want to make sure you're focusing on all areas that you're going to be evaluated on, but obviously your areas that are more heavily weighted, you want to obviously, you know, focus on and make sure that, you know, one, you're meeting it, can meet that criteria, and that your emphasis and focus is clearly spelled out, and make sure that you can just meet that particular criteria to its fullest so that you can get all the maximum points as possible. All right, so let's go ahead and continue on. Let's move on to our next question. And our next question is, what is included in evaluation criteria? What's included?
And Terry, I can jump on that one really quick. I think we
go ahead, Tyree.
Thank you. I think we kind of talked a lot about most of these, but I'll just give a few because we talked about some of the basic evaluation criteria, but a few other criteria you might see is cost analysis, technical support, quality. So criteria that is evaluating the quality, the services that the company provides, reliability, minimum requirements we already talked about. Maybe they may ask that service provider provides a single point of contact or a project manager, and you would have to kind of present that individual. Prior experience, we talked about past performance, personnel qualifications, including technical excellence, management capability, including solicitation compliance. So those are a few, but there are many. So really in reading your specific proposal, you would want to make sure first you find that section that has the evaluation criteria, and secondly, ensure that you understand each of the things that are required and you can fulfill them. But definitely, I'll pass it back.
Thank you, Tyree. That sounds like some action steps for our listeners to take. Gabe, I'm sorry. Do you have something you'd like to add? Someone else said something they want to add?
Sure. So I just want to add, Tyree, the point, my takeaway from what Tyree just said is this. Let's say you are bidding on a job and they have 8 evaluation criteria or 8 factors they're going to evaluate you against. And guess what? You go to the next client, the next agency. The first one may be City of Jacksonville. The next one may be the City of Atlanta. The next one may be the Department of Agriculture, the Federal Department of Agriculture. So the takeaway is, don't assume the way you are evaluated on this first bid is the same as your next one. Even within the same agency, depending on the services and products they need, the evaluation factors may change. So always read. Just a little plug is, our distinguished BidMore consultant, Terry, has a YouTube content on reading bid requirements. So it's always advisable to see what this agency is looking for. Now, to sum it up, maybe if you are, playing in the federal government space, there are 3 factors that you can think about. When in doubt, there is a technical capability. A lot of the things that Tyree spoke about fall under technical, whether it is quality management approach, your experience, and what you have, what you're going to include. All of them may be part of your technical capability. That's one common evaluation factor. The second one may fall under past performance. It's kind of like, what have you done lately related to this work? If the work you are doing is a bridge work, or it's remodeling homes, or whether it is janitorial, have you done similar work? So past performance comes in very handy. So that may be another way you get evaluated. The third way you get evaluated, the one that will never be missed, is price. So usually the lowest price, comes in with everything else. So I also want to introduce the word LPTA. In federal government uses LPTA. LPTA stands for lowest price technically acceptable. Let's say, if 3 companies submit a bid, and one submits for 100,000, the other one is 80,000, and the other one is 50. Guess what? If all 3 are technically comparable, the one with 50,000 is gonna win, but not always. Your price may be the lowest, but technically the other organizations may be superior. So those are the 3: technical capability, past performance, price are the most common, prevalent. What am I? It's another word I'm inventing. Prevalent. Oh, Tyree, you are the guy with words you invent. So these are the 3 that I want to point to just keep in mind.
Definitely, no doubt. I think those are great overarching evaluation criteria factors that you will see in the majority, if not all. So thank you for that, Gabe.
Thank you guys for sharing that information. Absolutely. So again, okay, we're talking about evaluation criteria. So I think one of the best, most important magical questions would be, where do you find evaluation criteria in a solicitation? You're telling me I should read this, I should be aware of it. So who like to tell me, where can we find the evaluation criteria in a solicitation? I think we lost Aaron, by the way. So we have Tyree, Gabe, and Alex.
No doubt. So I can definitely comment on that one. And then if anybody else would like to chime in, please do. But basically, you will find the evaluation criteria in a few different places. A lot of times it may have a separate section that will say evaluation criteria, or it may be included in the beginning of the solicitation. But if anybody would like to expand on that a little bit more, please.
Hi, Aaron. Thank you. Welcome back, Aaron. So we are talking about where we find the evaluation criteria in a solicitation. We're talking about where we find an evaluation criteria in a solicitation. So Tyree has given us a response. So if anyone else would like to chime in, please do so. All right. Hearing no others, thank you for that response, Tyree. I appreciate that. Let's go ahead and keep moving. Let's look at what are best practices to secure favorable scoring on evaluation criteria. So I feel like we're going to learn some action steps here. What are best practices? I am stumbling over that word today. Best practices to secure favorable scoring on evaluation criteria. Who would like to take that away?
I'll go ahead.
Hey,
we have 2. All right, Alice and Aaron.
Go ahead, Aaron.
All right, I'll speak to some of the best practices I know first, and then we'll move it. So one of the best practices, Gabe had mentioned this earlier, is reading and studying the evaluation, making sure that you can even meet the needs of the solicitor. So that's one of the, I would say, most important right there. And that's also where you start. Also try to answer all the questions, respond truthfully, accurately, and as straightforward as possible. That's a very key thing, because they like straightforward answers. They don't want colorful, they don't want elaborate, they just want straight to the point. So that is a very big rule that a lot of people often overlook, because they're trying to make their proposal stand out from others. And that's typically a very bad way to go with it. Also, time. Time is the biggest one. Most people don't realize that they run out of time. So they don't They don't consider all the time needed to actually do the process. So they often will start very late and then they'll run out of overall time to complete it. So that's a big one. And that's the last one I actually have for now. So Alex, go ahead and speak to yours.
I would say the best practices are to read, 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 and focus. Make sure you read all the requirements, make sure you read them and understand them. You can always set a calendar reminder so you know when it's due and you know when you should have a draft together and to make sure that you're checking every box.
I want to give one best practice that I learned from Aaron. Make a checklist because you want to make sure that you meet this criteria, because if you don't, you will not be selected. So you want to make sure you make a checklist so that you don't miss including any of these criteria within your response. So that would be mine. That would be mine to throw out to the group. Make a checklist and use it.
Prioritize. Also prioritizing the highest points. Get those out of the way right away. And
so I want to add one best practice. I'm in agreement with what my colleague said. One I want to add is actually use the evaluation criteria as topics, the way to organize your response, okay? Like the three I mentioned, technical approach, creates the first section as your technical approach. If the next criteria is past performance, put past performance. So organize your response using the evaluation factors. Why does that work? All of you who've been, in school at one point in your life, the best way to get an A from your teacher is to, if the teacher is asking you, what are the benefits of oxygen, to say the benefits of oxygen are, and, so by asking the questions and directly answering, you get good grade because you make life easy for them. One other thing I will mention, there may be a difference of opinion. Graphics. I have a contracting officer who receives a lot of our proposals. One said, Gabe, you write amazing proposals and you write many proposals. If you add graphics, it will be helpful. You know why? These contracting officers get a lot of responses, hundreds and hundreds. And guess what? What if you have graphical images, infographics that directly addresses, let's say, if one of the evaluation factors is your technical approach, what if your technical approach, you can write your technical approach in 5 fake paragraph, sentences. You can also use, infographics to show, there are 5 parts and you have infographics to help them see your approach. So unless they say, do not use graphics, if it's open-ended, human nature, pictures speak louder than words. So that may be another best practice that I have experienced.
Now, sometimes the criteria specifically state none, but also it's good practice to not put too many infographics in. Some people, they just kind of go with nothing but infographics and the vendor can't get any information from that. So to a level, yes, that is actually a very good approach.
Wow, you guys are sharing some really great best practices. So that's a lot of things that we can take note of. Hope the listeners were able to take note of the different best practices that was just shared. So I truly appreciate all of this information that you guys are sharing today. And we're going to go ahead and get moving on to our next one, which is, what is the recommended format to write your response to evaluation factors? Kind of sound like we had a little bit of an answer for this, but I'm sure we can elaborate some more. So what's the recommended format to write your response? Who would like to go ahead and take this one for me?
I'll mention one, Terry. So a lot of times, whenever you see an evaluation criteria, especially some that are more detailed, a lot of times what the vendor will in the request for proposal is they will outline how each section of the proposal needs to be laid out. Everything, page, cover letter, to the order of responses. Sometimes they specify, do not deviate from this order that we have placed here. So that's my number one.
Thank you, Aaron. Anyone else? All right. So I appreciate your response, Aaron. Thank you so very much. Now let's go ahead and look at what does the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or FAR, say about evaluation criteria?
I can address that.
Thank you, Gabe.
So the Federal Acquisition Regulation, just to kind of back up, as bidders, you may, we come across local small businesses who bid on local jobs or state level jobs or federal. To the extent you are using federal, you are bidding to a federal agency, the governing policy, the governing regulation is in the Federal Acquisition Regulation, or known as FAR, F-A-R. So there is FAR Section 52 is one of the largest sections of FAR 52, which contains, standard solicitation, provisions, contract clauses, certification requirement, notices, instructions that may be of interest to the vendor community. So evaluation criteria is actually in FAR Section 52. I think it's 52.1. If I slip here, forgive me. It's bottom line 52.1. I'm tripping here. I think I can access my notes. There is a specific section in 52 that addresses evaluation criteria. So whether you are bidding on, let's say, Department of Agriculture, or a Small Business Administration, or Veteran Affairs, or Department of Defense, the FAR, generally most agencies fall under FAR, and there are some agencies that may not fall under FAR. They kind of use the spirit of the FAR, but they may have their own. So you are safe to be familiar with the FAR. Even local state governments somewhat follow that guideline, not directly, but indirectly. So that is, an area you can look at to kind of generally get what the regulation is about. If anyone can find the specific FAR section for evaluation criteria, that will be helpful. Actually, I just found my notes. Oh my goodness, I'm so excited. So evaluation factors for award can be found under FAR section 52.212-2, 52-212-2. So let's say if you just, Google evaluation factors in FAR, it will come up, okay? So that is what it gets into. So it kind of basically goes over, evaluation factors related to, I mentioned early on, technical approach, past performance, and price. So you can get all of that scoop from there so that you are always in compliance in your bid submission.
Thank you, Gabe. I can appreciate that. I do appreciate this information. Thank you for sharing that. So would anyone else like to add to this particular question? Anyone else have any more information to share? No? All right. So with that being said, thank you so much, all of my colleagues, for sharing some information on the bid evaluation criteria. So it was a lot of great questions, a lot of great information that's shared. So moving forward, let's remember, in your bid evaluation criteria, you want to make sure that you are taking some good steps in the direction of reading. Read. I think I heard that several times, to make sure that you are reading the evaluation criteria, making sure that you are able to meet the criteria, making sure that you are finding the evaluation criteria in the solicitation. Again, make sure you read. That seems to be very key. That is my topic that Gabe mentioned before, that you are reading the evaluation criteria. Make sure you can meet the the criteria so that you are able to submit the best response possible for a solicitation. So on that note, I will turn it back over to Tyree. Tyree?
So, Terry, can I just tell a quick story?
Absolutely, Gabe.
So, this may be re-edited into it, so I really like your closing comment to read the evaluation criteria as a closing remark. So, I can't beat that, but there is one story that I want to share. So the one thing you haven't heard in this presentation is a bid protest. Bid protest is when, there is an evaluation criteria and there are these vendors who respond, and let's say you as a vendor end up winning and someone else protests, basically takes to court, the agency who gave you the contract, for favoritism or whatever that it is, not right or this and that. So ICAT was in that situation. So this is many years ago, and we submitted a bid at one of the federal agencies, and we bid against the incumbent, an entrenched incumbent who has done this for many, many years. And we submitted a bid and we snatched that contract from the incumbent. How did we win? We went by the book and we were in compliance with the evaluation criteria. This is a big contract. And the incumbent was totally taken by surprise. They thought they have done this for many years and they had maybe their guards down, and they lost to us. And so guess what? They took the agency to court. They took the agency to court, bid protest, and the contract was put on hold. By the way, that was kind of a scary moment. And so guess what? When it appeared before the judge, so the judge has to take a look at the evaluation factor. And one of the points the bid protester brought against us is, we've been doing this work, and how can this little known company in Florida win this? That's what they said. How can this little known company in Florida win this contract? We are the Goliath. We've done this for many, many years. So that's their argument. And so I think that what the judge, has done was, compare our submission against, the evaluation criteria. And although we're not as deeply entrenched as the incumbent, we ended up triumphant. So that's a bit of my story. So bottom line is, always assume, when you are in compliance, and if the bid is protested by the incumbent or someone else, your compliance may be what will end. It will help you to be triumphant in the end, even in the court of law. So this is something really serious we're talking about. So I just want to share that story. With that, back to you, Terry.
Thank you, Gabe, for sharing that. I appreciate that. And I'm sure our listeners appreciate that too. So now they know what to do moving forward.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's Bid More webinar. We know you will use this knowledge, these tips, and this insight in your future bidding activities. Please use this time to ask your questions in the Q&A chat. And for even more free tips to help you create more informed bids and estimates, subscribe and like our YouTube channel entitled Bid More. Remember, the Bid More program encourages you to use every opportunity available to you to sharpen your saw to bid more and win more. Take care.